Hey you, it's True with the first review of the new paintbrush virtuoso Hokusai. This light SSR comes with a decent speed of 469, nice, and is the spiritual successor of the prior year unit Percival, though Hokusai embraces the elemental dependency of her skill set even more, as you will see. Her first active skill is called Blot Out, gives 3 spirit and costs 50 time units, damages 1 enemy for 100% damage and weakens them. Then enemies lose spirit equal to the number of element types that remain on the battlefield, so that is up to 6 spirit lost for the enemy team, while your own team, the team of Hokusai, gains 3. Now 100% damage of course isn't a whole lot, so before we move on I actually have to mention a part of her passive, and that is that all of her attacks gain 100% damage for each element type on the battlefield. So that means you can add at least 100% to all of the numbers I will say. More likely than not there will be at least 3 to 4 elements on the battlefield at any point in time, so that makes for some much more interesting attack damage outputs. In the extreme scenario, of course, 600% addition is quite nice, so this Blot Out skill, for example, would deal 700% damage. But where it gets really spicy and probably one of her very nice skills is the Paintfall. It costs just 1 spirit and 1 time unit, so it is an instant skill, it is an attack all skill. The base damage is 50%, but keep in mind each element represented on the battlefield adds 100% to that number, and this attack ignores damage reduction effects, skin passive skills and the counter stance status effect. The latter two of which are rather obvious, given that it's an attack all skill. Nowadays all of them have that kind of ignore, but the ignoring of the damage reduction effects is quite the nice part, especially if you think you have multiple elements on the battlefield, and this deals up to 650% damage to all enemies, ignoring damage reduction effects. Additionally, this also randomly grants all allies either stun wards or sleep wards, and then it also heals all allies for 200% of the user's attack, triggering once for each element type that remains on the battlefield, so that can very well be a full heal rather easily if she is decently leveled. She unlocks this Painful whenever she damages an enemy with another attack, so that means she will usually prioritize this skill and then either go to the first skill next or her third skill. And the third skill is called Stroke of Genius, damages 1 enemy, so yet again just 100% base damage and additional damage for each element represented on the battlefield, ignoring any effects of non-boss enemies that would prevent the target from being defeated. So this is an execute skill, it does not ignore armor however, but there is additional damage scaling involved, 300% damage if the user or the target have defeated 1 unit with an attack while on the battlefield, 400% damage instead if the user or target have defeated 2 or more units with attacks while on the battlefield. So this is simultaneously a savage skill and a vengeance skill, but the cost is also rather significant, I would say. 3 spirit cost, 50 time units, so definitely something to keep in mind. And then we come to her final skill, and that is called Masterpiece, and I really have to say I also think that the skill animation of this skill is quite the masterpiece. Really enjoying that kind of wave image that comes on there. However, unfortunately, and you might notice this looking at the battle playing out in front of you, this is a skill that is rather rare to observe. Not only does it cost 3 spirit and 50 time units as well, just as the Stroke of Genius, but even more importantly, it is locked for 300 time units after the user has entered the battlefield, so that is a classic survival skill. Classic also in terms of the TU length required, so that is a rather big amount of time that has to pass for her to unlock this masterpiece. However, there is one exception, and that is if all 6 element types are on the battlefield, this lock can be ignored, but I gotta say that is quite the high threshold. And even then, regardless of when it unlocks, this skill is only usable twice per battle. Now why is that? Simply speaking, because this immediately defeats one non-boss enemy. It also gives her the kill for that, and this effect ignores revenge passive skills, revival passive skills, any passive skills or effects of active skills that would prevent the target from being defeated, and also it cannot be redirected by guardians. So once Hokusai unlocks this skill, this is really something to be reckoned with, because no strong unit on the enemy team will be safe from that attack. Now quickly moving on to her passive side, and the first passive is called Elemental Palette. I already mentioned the kind of attack bonus for each element represented on the battlefield, so that is very important of course for her skill set, otherwise her attack output would be way too low. Even with that kind of scaling, it arguably can be a little low still, especially if there is a bit of uniformity in terms of elements on the battlefield. This means that unlike in the example battle that I'm gonna show you between the best light and fire units at the moment, she rather prefers to be in a quite diverse team. Now how diverse? Quite diverse, because when this unit damages an enemy with an attack, if they are water or dark, she stuns them for 100 time units. If they are fire or light, she grants them the sleep status effect for 100 time units. This is a forced sleep effect. And if they are storm or earth, she grants them the mega poison status effect for 100 time units. Rather reminiscent of Percival's elemental eruption, just that this skill basically triggers on all of her attacks, which is a little crazy if you think about it. Then again, it is also crazy in terms of how are you gonna build a team around her, because of course there is a lot going on in terms of, okay, she sleeps maybe some enemies, she poisons some enemies, she stuns some enemies, so possibly a hybrid team build will be best for her, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Another part of her first passive is also that she enters the battle with a stun ward and a sleep ward, which is quite important for her, because as we will see in the second passive called Legendary Artist, she only comes with a hold ground. So if this unit would be defeated by an enemy attack or a status effect while having more than 1 HP, she survives with 1 HP. That is not that much keeping her alive. Luckily she also comes with a permanent armor of 50% damage reduction. She even gains 80% damage reduction from attacks if all 6 element types are on the battlefield. So she really is that kind of avatar unit that combines all the elements, or is the strongest if she is with all the elements on the battlefield. Not that easy to do, especially if arguably one of the very best units in the game right now is also light. But yeah, another thing that hopefully will help her survive is that each time an ally, this includes herself, gets the turn, she will be healed for 25% of her max HP. And at the end of the turn, she will have sleep status effects removed. But that means that if she gets the turn while being asleep, she will still be asleep, not be able to take that turn, lose 100 time units, and only then wake up. Now the next part is where her skill set gets slightly schizophrenic, because now she suddenly would like to have similar elements on the team, or matching elements on the team, because whenever another ally gets the turn, and if there is a different ally, including Hokusai, that matches that element on the battlefield, the acting ally will be healed for 25% of max HP, and allies will gain 1 spirit at the end of that turn. That is a bit of a nice callback to another light unit in Light Mirai. However, that was already 4 years ago. When Hokusai enters the battlefield, all allies are granted Elemental Quicken. What this means is that units with Elemental Quicken will have their time unit costs for all of their skills reduced by 20%, while there is a different ally with a matching element on the battlefield. Whenever another ally enters the battlefield from reinforcements, they are also granted Elemental Quicken. This is quite a long paragraph on this kind of Elemental Quicken. I wouldn't think too much about it. It is a bit of a nice side gimmick, but definitely nothing crazy OP in my eyes. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier that is also similar to the original Light Percival is that she cannot be defeated from damage from poison or burn status effects. Very important since she only has the hold ground, so at least there is that to potentially keep her alive a bit longer. Then again, after listing all these skills, there is a lot to like about her skill set, but the big elephant in the room is her survivability. Yes, she has the kind of permanent damage reduction from attacks, but quite a few attacks nowadays ignore damage reductions. And I'm a bit worried about her ability to potentially get turns or get stunned, get slapped. She's only really having the kind of wards. At least she has the heal on ally turn, which should help her in combination with that hold ground. Yet that still is my biggest concern for her. And then the second one is, where do you actually fit her in a great team right now? She's very much a wild card, a bit RNG dependent, especially in terms of which teams she runs into. Now she's definitely less RNG and much stronger than the other light unit from last year in Genie. But is it gonna be enough? I think it will be a very good addition to potential hybrid teams, also to kind of units that already are a bit hybrid in terms of potentially applying poison and cursed sleep, for example. Then again, her attacks can wake enemies, but then also again, her attacks can also sleep enemies. So there is a big question mark in terms of how well she will play out. But yeah, the good thing is in terms of hybrid applicability, she is actually very good. I could even see a world where she helps in some burn teams. I'm just not the biggest fan of her. I think in sleep teams, if you run a sleep team, I think she's an easy skip. But if you have an idea for any other team, you could probably run her. But I do have to point out that I think in terms of universal usage and more impact in terms of your success on the battlefield, the other recent light unit in Kojiro will still prevail. I think there's very few situations where I would pick Hokusai over Kojiro. Then again, at just one copy, she can provide a lot more value and is actually superior. So one copy is probably a value added for pretty much any team at some point in your arena battalion. But those are just my initial thoughts on Hokusai. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this analysis and the battle footage. If you did, leave a like below. I very much appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already to become part of the exclusive True Carrot Club. And as always, thanks for watching.